If you are getting ready for retirement, maybe you're in retirement, you've probably heard the difference between the 4% rule and the guardrails income planning strategy. And you're probably wondering, what is best for me to receive money from my investments? I've been working all these years, saving into tax deferred investments, a 401k, a 403b, a TSP, an IRA, all these investments that have not been taxed yet. And so when you withdraw those, you're going to have to pay taxes, but also you may want to enjoy some of that money. And so you're looking for the most strategic way how to do that. So if that is you, you're going to love this video, but primarily if you have a pension. So if you have a pension, we're going to be talking about the differences in these income strategies that are probably going to be different to you. So you may have watched the video before on the 4% rule or maybe on guardrails, and you may be thinking one's better than the other for you. And I'm here to challenge that today to say if you have a pension, you shouldn't do either of those strategies. And that's what's in today's video of Joe Knows Retirement. So if you're in that 2% club, you have a pension and you have $1 million or more saved, this video is for you. Also, the book will be out here soon, and we're looking forward to educating you here today.
Joe knows taxes.
Joe knows the market.
Joe knows Social Security.
Joe knows income planning.
Joe knows pickleball? No.
This is Joe Knows Retirement.
So let me start off the video by just saying I'm not anti the 4% rule. I'm not anti the guardrail strategy. I think it can make sense for the right person. But I do want to be very clear with the clients that we serve here, because they're such a niche crowd, right? Only 2% of the population, as I just explained, their planning is going to be more unique. It's going to be different. And so for them, we look at more of a tailored approach. And to be honest with you, it's really a mixture of the two types of strategies. And it's really going to come down to what are their goals. But remember, because you have a pension, you have a guaranteed income stream for the rest of your life. And some people say if you have a pension, you live a happier retirement. If you don't have that concern for where you're going to get the income from, that can be a great feeling to have every day you wake up. You don't have to worry about the markets being down or maybe not getting enough return if you want to look to protect your investments. You have more financial freedom, which allows you to do what you want, when you want, with who you want, as I always say. And so based on that approach, you could be as aggressive with your investments or as conservative with your investments is what we tell people. You can take on as much risk or as little risk as you want there. And so that's the first place we really start when we're looking to do an income plan for our clients, is understanding what are their goals here. Do they want to leave money behind to maybe their children, a loved one, or maybe they want to make sure their spouse is good to go, and that's a big priority to them. They want to prepare for what's called the widow's penalty. That's when one spouse passes and you could pay nearly double the amount of taxes there. Or maybe they want to leave money to a charity, maybe a church, an organization, if that's important to you. Then maybe in those scenarios, you may not want to spend as much money. You maybe want to be more conservative in your retirement spending. And a lot of clients we see, as we're talking with the pension, they may never need to touch their investments. And so if that's the case, maybe they look to take on more risk. Maybe the income planning is not even necessarily a big concern for them. And so they just want to keep that money growing over time so they can leave the biggest impact at the end of the day. And for those people, we challenge them, hey, you can't take this money with you. There's no U-Haul behind the hearse. You can't take this money to heaven. We don't need it there. And so it's a matter of what are we going to do with this wealth that we've accumulated? How are we going to be the best steward of that? And so we encourage clients, there's three things you can do. You can spend your money up front, you can gift it to your loved ones, or you can give it to the charities we've been talking about here. But you can either decide to do that, or it's going to be gift or given when you pass based on who the beneficiaries are. So we've seen a lot of times where clients may want to put a part of this income plan not only for themselves to spend, but also to gift and give now, maybe more to their charities, maybe more to their loved ones, so they can go fund their Roth IRA now that they may not be able to do, or put more towards their 401k and get the tax advantages moving forward. Those are all things that could be possibilities. And that's one thing with our clients that we work with. We always encourage and allow our clients' children to work with us, because if they are going to do that gifting, like many of our clients look to do, we want to make sure that it's done effectively and that they're putting it to the best use. And then if both spouses pass away, we want to be there to make sure the generational transfer of the wealth gets done efficiently and gets done the right way. A lot of times inheritances are spent right away. They're not necessarily, utilized within a plan, or utilized to the same values that the people who accumulated are, because it's found money and it's very understood, and they just may not have the financial acumen to understand what's important to do with that type of wealth. And so that's what a lot of our clients really value of working with a team, to know that trusted guide is going to be there even when they are no longer here. And so if that's important to you, it could be a reason to seek out help from a team if you've been doing it on your own, to get that further help. And so that could be one side of the table. But the other side of the table is, no, we want our last dollar to bounce back. We want to spend this money. We want to maximize our retirement. And I'll tell you a story. We had a client that said, we want 10 years worth of income coming into us. We don't really care after 10 years if we don't have any more in our investments, because our pension's so large, Social Security is so large. We just want to enjoy it. That may not be what I would want to do, but that's what they wanted to do. And so when we build plans here, it's very tailored. We're going to do what the client wants, and we're going to make sure we can recommend and tell them the pros and cons of different ideas. But at the end of the day, it's their plan. And so for them, the guardrails or the 4% rule don't matter. It doesn't exist. It doesn't matter. So if you have a pension, again, you're going to have more unique situations, more unique opportunities as well. If I have $1 million and no pension, I have to do the 4% rule, because in the 10 years, if I spend everything, Social Security is probably not going to be enough for me to live on at that point, unless they're very frugal. And so you can see where the strategies can become different, where not only can you be more aggressive with your investments or less aggressive, but you can also be more aggressive in your income planning early on retirement. And this is what we call the go-go years. And so for this client, they literally said, I want to maximize my go-go years. I'm not going to be healthy forever. Let's spend this money and enjoy it. I want to fly first class. I don't want my kids to fly first class. And so if you have that same type of personality and same type of persona, then that could be a really good strategy for you to consider. But there's also the other side of it, where maybe you want to spend a large amount in 1 year. And we see this probably more frequently than you would imagine. We just had a client. They wanted to put $600,000 towards a new airplane. They have been saving all their life. They've been in a great position. And this is a big goal of theirs. They have health concerns. They want to make sure that they can utilize and enjoy their retirement. They want to go on trips with, him and his wife want to go on trips together to be able to enjoy their retirement years, what they work so hard for. And so if that's you, the retirement income planning is going to be very unique and different for you too. Good luck with the guardrail, the 4% rule. Probably not going to make sense. Even if the market's up a ton, the guardrails isn't going to encourage a 40% or a 30% withdrawal rate in the first year of retirement. And so, that's where we're really able to help our clients, not only in understanding the income of planning approach to it, but also, what investments do we take from? What if one of the stocks is down and we see an opportunity that's going to come back up? We may not want to pull from that specific investment. And when you're taking out that much money, you have to be very aware of this, because you could end up causing yourself to sell off the wrong investments. The other part of it is the tax consideration. Good luck getting $600,000 out of your IRA in 1 year. That's going to be a huge taxable event. And that's why we do strategic tax planning for clients. And so, for this client specifically, they're not looking at it to do it this year. So we have a few years to potentially plan for this large lump sum need that they're going to want for this airplane. And so, we could look to do 3 different withdrawals over 3 different years. One big beautiful bill getting passed. Good thing about that is it's raise deductions. It's also look to lower the taxes for a longer period of time. And so this could be an advantageous strategy for them to consider as they do that. But there's also even grander the decisions to make on top of that. If they have a brokerage account, we can take more money out of there. We have to be aware of capital gains there, but that could be a consideration to help them get that big of an income need. And so the question for them is not, do I have enough? They have enough because of their pension, right? That's guaranteed income. If you have $50,000 pension a year, I do a lot of calculations on this video. You live 20 years, that pays you out just $1 million, not counting any cost of living adjustments. You're not worried about sequence of returns risk. So you're in a really good position to be able to make those types of decisions. So for them, it wasn't, do I have enough? It was, how do I do this most efficiently? How do I save the most money on taxes? How do I not make a stupid mistake and end up paying more for this airplane than what I wanted to because of taxes, or maybe not doing it the right way, taking from the right investment. So that's really where we encourage them that if we do a tailored plan and maybe we spend more in year 1 or year 2 or year 3, well, that means we may not be able to spend more later. As we talked about earlier, maybe it still could be, but we just don't have more to spend in the very future. And so those are all the considerations we want to think about in that scenario. So those are why we don't typically recommend the 4% or guardrail for our clients. And another reason is just because they're not typically taking out systematic withdrawals every year. It's more for, we call it their play checks. And so the pension, the Social Security, that covers their paychecks, their actual paychecks, the bills you have to pay, all the necessities. The play checks are, you can do whatever you want, whenever you want, right? And so if someone were to say, hey, I want to take out a systematic approach, then we would look more in the guardrails and 4% rule. And we'd really look at a combination of those two if they're looking for systematic withdrawals. Again, most people with pensions already have that systematic withdrawal coming out. I mean, for example, if you wanted $50,000 a year in income, and we'll just use 40,000, an easy number. If you wanted $40,000 a year in income, if that's what your pension's worth, then the 4% rule on $1 million is what gets you $40,000 of income. And so, if you have $40,000 pension a year, you basically have the equivalent of $1 million right there. And you've heard of the thing, like, if I have $1 million, I can retire. Well, you got that in a pension and you've got your $1 million on the side. So you're basically already doing the 4% rule. So for you, it may be an actual 8% withdrawal rate compared to your peers. And so that can be a good example to give you more confidence and peace of mind to know you can spend that money and you can dial it back and it's just going to keep growing. It's going to be like you're not even taking anything away from that. So I hope you understand that scenario as well. But I want to show where the guardrail really plays in here. And so for our clients, the market may have had an up year. And so in that case, we can tell them, hey, let's take some chips off the table. Let's either look to take some money off to spend it or give it there because this is money we weren't expecting. And so that can kind of be like found money for them where they could end up spending more. Or maybe the market's down and they're like, you know what, I could wait another year to do this Alaskan cruise. And if that's the case, just wait till next year and do it at that point. Now, where the 4% rule and guardrail planning can really become helpful is depending on if you're DIYing it. So if you're DIYing it, then maybe that's going to be more of a simple, easy flowing thing that you just don't have to worry about the advanced calculations. For your life savings, your retirement, I'm not sure if that's the route you really want to go. And we do know a lot of advisors out there, they do the 4% rule, they do the guardrails planning. In my mind, it's more of a cookie cutter type approach. This is something you really want to evaluate every year. If you have an advisor that's just paying you out 4% from the start of your relationship and not really making any adjustments to that rule over time and not reviewing this every single year, you're going to have some concerns and considerations there. But we like to use the 4% rule just as a peace of mind and confidence to know what that looks like. Also understand the 4% rule in my mind is just not perfect. It's a good example, an idea, but if just like I said, you don't want to follow that every single year because assumptions are going to change, inflation is going to change, the market's going to be down one year. But if you plan the right way, you could make the 4% rule work. And so when it comes to income planning for our clients in this position with a pension million plus, we're looking at more strategic ways to do this. Typically, our clients could have everything in equities, as we talked about earlier. If they were to do that, then we want to be very choosy about where we take the income from or when we do it. That's where the guardrails maybe make more sense. You could have more return potential, but we got to worry about the sequence of returns risk when the market's down and then you take out withdrawal. That's two losses there, and that can be pretty costly to your retirement if you're really knowing you're going to need that expense. And so our personal philosophy is anything you need within 3 to 5 years, make sure that's protected. If you know it's going to happen, if you know you're going to go for that no matter what, don't take the risk of the market. Just get the certainty is a wise planning. And if you're really conservative, maybe you look to have 10 years of income that you're planning for. And it doesn't just have to be income. It can be things on top of that. And this can be things like vacations or maybe looking to buy a second home, or maybe you just want to not have this much, maybe not a fun thing, but maybe you want to have it for healthcare costs that could potentially come up down the road. And so that can be why it's important to have some money protected. Now, if you're just a type though, like, I worked all these years, I can take more risk to get more return, but I don't need to. Like your goals are met if you get a 5% return or a 20% return. We all want 20% returns, but obviously that's going to mean more risk that you're obviously going to have to take to achieve that outcome. And so a lot of clients may say, hey, I'm comfortable with a reasonable rate of return right now. And so that could be a question you ask yourself when it comes to that risk level. But always want to think about when you're going to need that money. And we have a purpose of money conversation that we have that goes off of what we're talking about today that better meets this income planning goal there. And it's really where we look at what is our paycheck money, as we talked about, what is our paycheck, and what is our future money. And so we really challenge our clients to think about it in these 3 categories. Paychecks, that's your pension, Social Security, and then maybe you just know for sure you want to have a systematic payment of an extra $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, whatever it is from your investments. You have that no matter what. That may only be a 1-2% withdrawal rate from your investments, knowing how much you've saved and knowing that you probably don't have a huge income gap between your Social Security and pension, after that. And so that may be that. And then you take all the things that you can think about that you're going to want over the next 30 years, add them all up, all the vacations. Maybe it's one vacation a year for $10,000 and you want to do that every year for 30 years. Okay, $300,000 to $500,000 due to inflation. Okay, that is going to be sectioned off there. Healthcare. Maybe you're worried about long-term care. Maybe we're going to put $500,000 there. That's covered. That's good to go. Maybe there's, you want to buy an RV, you want to buy a car, whatever those expenses could be. Add it all up. And then and maybe you want to gift, sorry to keep going, but maybe you want to gift your money there. Maybe you want to gift to your kids while you're living. Okay, add that up and put that into your paycheck. That's what you really want to do right now while you're living. And then see if there's anything left over. And if there's nothing left over, well, challenge yourself to be more realistic in your spending goals for what you have, or, you're going to run out, or be okay with the fact that you're going to run out, right? Maybe you look to have a 20-year play fund and you're good if it runs out after that. But in most cases with our clients, they have a really hard time using all their money in that play check category there. And so we have to encourage them for the future money. And the future money is a matter of what are we going to do with this at this point? And that's where we either challenge them, let's shift some over to the paycheck. Let's have more money to add to our systematic so we can just, comfortably do more throughout the year. Or there's maybe those big expenses. Let's have more go to the paycheck section. Or, let's just look to give this as a legacy when we pass in a more fruitful way. And so maybe that means, doing heavier Roth conversions so that money goes to the children Roth, tax-free if they're potentially going to be in a higher bracket. Maybe that means looking at a life insurance policy where it's a permanent death benefit, where it's tax-free. You could access for long-term care if you need to, so your funds don't get dwindled away. And a potentially good way to diversify those funds and look to a different strategy. And maybe it's the fact that you want to be more aggressive. Maybe we look at more of the stock market for those types of investments, maybe some more growth and oriented type investments that we can get a little more potential return, knowing that, hey, if that's our future money, that could cause some doubling and tripling by the time we end up passing away. And so that's how we really want to think about this. And then from there is how you decide to do the income planning with everything that we talked about here today. So understand, at the end of the day, having a pension, having $1 million plus, your income planning is definitely different. You're only 2% of the population. You're not necessarily worried about running out of money. It's just how do you maximize it at this point. And if you're looking for more advanced type of help with this from a team who really understands your situation, feel free to reach out to us. If you've been watching to this time, if you've watched other videos, you may be interested in the type of planning we do here. So go ahead and schedule a link. There should be a link in the description below, or on our website. You can go there and schedule a call with our team, and we'll see if we could be a good fit and explore from there. We get a lot of people from this channel reach out to us that are great people, and we have great working relationships with them moving forward. So if that's you're looking for the help, don't hesitate, reach out. We'd love to connect, and hope you have a great rest of your day. And that's all I've got for today's episode of Joe Knows Retirement.